Hello. Okay, just a quick reminder that this is your infrastructure summit on this stage. So if ever anyone is looking for the infrastructure summit, it's right here on Prosperia stage. Please join me in welcoming Britt, Head of Partnerships at Espresso Systems, to take us through our next talk on a chain for every app.
Entire screen.
Entire screen. Well, but I want it to be I don't want it to be this one. Yeah.
Gotcha. So do
Change. Window.
there you go.
Maybe this window. So how do I have it do?
That's kind of the thing, is if you're doing mirror screen, whatever you've got on here will be up there.
Okay, so there's no way to do like speaker notes separate from there.
There was.
Oh, extended display.
Extended display.
Yeah.
There we go. Move this to here. Oh. I don't know why it's not going. There we go. Yep. All right. We got about 11 minutes left.
Okay.
Mike?
Okay. Okay. Mic check? Good? Okay. Awesome. Thank you all for coming today. Sorry for the technical delay here. I'm with a company called Espresso, and today I'll be talking to you guys about why we need a chain for every app. For those of you who have been building an Ethereum for quite a while and are familiar with the infrastructure, you may hear this talk as a defense of the L2 thesis, or some of the reasons why I think the roll-up-centric roadmap is not dead, but is actually inevitable. For those of you who are newer to the space, I hope that you walk away from this talk rethinking what it means to come on-chain. The lines between L1s and L2s are getting pretty blurry, and I think it's time that we expand on what we conceive as possible today. I don't know why it's not going.
I don't either. There you go.
Okay. Sorry, folks. It's gone on my screen. There we go. Okay. All right, so the financial system is getting an upgrade. You can scarcely turn on crypto Twitter or CNBC or Bloomberg without reading a headline from Robinhood or Revolut or the DTCC or the Treasury themselves talking about how crypto is revolutionizing things. The new system is on the rise, and that's powered by cryptography, decentralized architectures, and open source development. Together, these three things are what we typically refer to as a blockchain. But the question still remains, how does this new system get built? What are the right architectures, paradigms, and technologies to support a future financial system that achieves everything that we've set out here, specifically one that is more open, resilient, and composable? People love to talk about how much money has gone into blockchain infrastructure. I would estimate between 25 and 50 billion has been input into the system in the past 10 years, just in venture capital alone. And we've run a lot of experiments in that time across L1s, L2s, interop protocols, oracles, but have we cracked the right architectures, foundational technologies, and repeatable processes that make going on-chain feasible and scalable for all manner of financial apps? I would say that we have, or at least we're getting close, and the solution, in my opinion, is going to be an app for every chain. This answer isn't new or revolutionary. It'll sound familiar to many of you, but perhaps not for others. So going back about 10 years ago, with the first ideas around this coming from Cosmos and Polkadot, we as an industry started exploring the idea of an app chain. Today we also have Ethereum, Celestia, us, and some others working on this same thesis. And so going back 2016, 2017 era, Cosmos had this idea for Cosmos zones that would all leverage the single hub or Cosmos chain and use IBC or inter-blockchain communications to connect them. These zones are effectively app chains. Polkadot had the same idea around the same time, pioneering the idea of a parachain that would connect to a single relay chain. A few years later, Ethereum announced the rollup-centric roadmap. This borrowed from the same previous ideas where Ethereum was the hub chain that supports an ecosystem of purpose-built L2s. Celestia, who you may be familiar with, further built this out with their modularity thesis that represents much the same thing. There are many different execution layers, often L2 rollups, leveraging other layers for settlement, DA, or data availability, and consensus. Espresso, my company, has worked in a similar way, supporting chains like Celo, ApeChain, and Rari with really fast confirmations and optional data availability as well. And we're seeing this architecture even now reflected in newer blockchains like Zero, which was announced last week by the Layer 0 team. So what are we talking about here? What is an app chain, and what do these approaches all have in common? Let's define it. An app chain is going to be a customized execution environment that defines several things, including block time, ordering rules, fee market dynamics, a privacy posture, compliance framework, and many more. And this differentiates from the way that we're used to thinking about deploying apps as smart contracts on a general purpose chain like Ethereum, where all of the apps on that chain have to adhere to the same set of rules, whether that's about privacy or block times or ordering and anything else that you might think of. And so the big unlock here is this shift when we stop thinking about rollups as scaling solutions and start thinking about them as individual execution environments. We unlock a major playground, essentially, of space to work with and what we can accomplish. So why do we keep seeing this architecture over and over again in the blockchain space? We found time and time again that this concept of generic blockchain space, as you might find in the EVM or on Ethereum L1, is not sufficiently flexible to support all of the cases that the world wants to see in the world of finance and beyond. And this isn't unique to blockchains. To blockchain dynamics. We see the same type of evolution in technology unbundling as things mature across different areas, whether that's going from mainframe setups to clouds, monolithic services to microservices, a single instance to sharded databases, and again, L1s becoming many chains. As technologies mature and customers demand greater customizability and flexibility, these things devolve. And so when you look at all of the components involved in the decision to come on chain, app chains are the obvious winning choice. As you can see here, building an L1 comes with really high lead time for development, and building a consensus protocol comes with a lot of long-term overhead. Apologies. Okay. Comes with a lot of long-term overhead. Likewise, choosing to deploy your app on multiple different instances across different EVMs comes with its own set of headaches. You would then have to adopt your code to play by the rules of all these individual chains. That's not easy in the short term, and it's not easy in the long term. And so the middle ground here is to launch your own app chain where you can have your own customizability within your code and carry the brand name associated with being ABC chain instead of ABC app on Solana chain, for example. So after 10 years, do we have a chain for every app? Well, not quite, but we're getting there. Today, you can see there is a migration happening. Some big examples that you're all familiar with from Uniswap deploying Unichain as a rollup on Ethereum. You also have rumors of Polymarket doing this. Other notable examples in the crypto space are Rarible creating Rari chain, the Bored Ape Yacht Clubs creating Ape Chain, and perhaps DYDX is the original app chain here. And then in the financial world, you've got Robinhood is the notable new one, creating Robinhood Chain. Also, you have Coinbase associated with Base, Kraken associated with Inc., and several L2s are starting to consider, several L1s are starting to consider migration to becoming an L2, with the notable example in the space of Celo, who is now an L2 on Ethereum. And what are you doing today if you're not doing this? Well, the alternative is to deploy your own L1. All of the flagship apps of the last few years that have chosen not to launch an app chain have gone with the L1 route. And that carries some of that great customizability benefit that we talked about, but it comes with a lot of overhead. Building and maintaining a consensus layer, which is required for an L1, is really hard work. And so it makes it infeasible for many teams unless you are a team like Arc or Tempo, for example, who have either a lot of resources or a long pedigree in the space, Plasma as well. Or another example would be Hyperliquid here, who has a pretty lightweight need for a decentralized consensus. So for them, it may make sense to have an L1 infrastructure. And the era of the app chain is upon us for everyone else outside of those major brands. We're at an inflection point here where after a decade of experimentation, we're finally seeing meaningful traction. And I think we're on the cusp of seeing an explosion of new chains. The big game changer in this era is going to be performance. So to define this performance-driven era of tech, let's start by looking back on what the past generations have looked like. We can split this into three things. We started with Generation 1, or the monolithic L1, in which you had smart contracts deployed directly on a general purpose VM like Ethereum L1, and that was all of those smart contracts were underpinned by that monolithic L1. This era was really about creating new digital assets and apps. Generation 2 is the roll-up era, which has lasted us really for the last 5 years here. In this era, execution environments moved away from the L1, becoming more customizable. And this era was really all about exploring different ways to bring existing assets and financial services on-chain by combining different components of underlying infrastructure in a modular way. I think what's to come is this next generation, Gen 3, which we're calling the app chain era. And what's really going to define the next 5 years is not just the ease with which all of these financial applications can come on chain through this kind of app chain infrastructure, but I think for the first time, we're really going to be able to solve one of the real problems that we've seen with this roll-up model, which is real-time communication between chains. If you look back at the problem with finance as a whole, with blockchains, and certainly with roll-ups, is that our assets have remained trapped in inefficient silos. While the internet has allowed for information to flow freely across the world, our assets are still stuck in these silos. And moving assets between those silos is expensive, frustrating, and sometimes risky. So the promise of blockchain technology has always been to upgrade the financial system to solve this problem. But no monolithic blockchain is flexible enough to support this, resulting in a fragmented world now of many chains that still don't communicate well in real time. And this has arguably been the downfall of projects like Cosmos, the challenge that Polkadot has seen, and the biggest roadblocks for the roll-up-centric Ethereum roadmap. But the vision that I want to leave you with today is a world in which liquidity is unified across all of these apps, specifically all of these app chains that can communicate in real time. And the goal is to make it easy to build any financial application as its own chain with customized execution, ordering, privacy, compliance, and anything else that you want. And critically, a requirement is that you have to enable all of these environments to communicate securely in real time. And so what's going to catalyze this era of app chains? I think the answer here is interoperability. This has been a major roadblock that every attempt at app chains has faced. Remember, the era of rollups enabled customizability, but didn't tackle the problem of interoperability. But we are tackling this by underpinning app chains with a base layer that can offer fast finality. Fast finality enables real-time communication, which enables composability and interop, which enables aggregated liquidity, which brings to life the vision that we just outlined above. At Espresso, my company, we've been building over the last few years exactly what I think we need to power this solution. This diagram shows at a high level an example with Cello and Katana, two chains that will be going live with Espresso in the upcoming weeks. Once they're live, they'll benefit from fast finality, giving them an edge up on other chains that will still remain more siloed. You'll recall, let's talk about performance, that I mentioned the big unlock here. Let's take a closer look at what that means in real numbers. We've recently brought our latency as a chain down to 2 seconds, and our throughput supports 5 megabytes per second. In contrast, Ethereum, which is the great World War III resistant decentralized machine, has a much poorer performance of 15-minute latency and throughput of 0.9 megabytes per second. This is great for making sure that Ethereum is never down, but it doesn't work for real-time communications, and it isn't suitable to support a layer of app chains. What we've seen is major innovation performance breakthroughs in the past that we can expect to be mirrored today. What the internet did for global data transmission, we believe blockchains will do for global asset transmission as well. Prior to the subscription-based era of the internet, broadband pricing was time-based or per message, which created a scarcity mindset, which created a lack of innovation. In the world of blockchain, unlocking better latency and throughput will lead to the same explosion of innovation in the space that allows every app to come on chain. This slide is actually not quite up to date. There are a couple of new additions that I need to add here, but I just wanted to give a shout out and show some love. You can see a rapidly growing list of chains here that are integrating with the Espresso network. Some of them you know, some of others you might not, but that's kind of the point. You don't know every financial application. You shouldn't know every chain, but all of them are coming on chain in this app chain way through Espresso to achieve their fast finality. And so I'll leave you with this last note here, which is a little bit of a coming soon alpha reveal here. Espresso has always been a modular base layer that provides rollups with fast finality, but the era of the app chain still requires more. It's my pleasure today to leave you with the introduction to the Espresso stack. This is an offering that's suitable for app chains, whether they're being developed by large enterprises or hackathon participants. The Espresso stack makes it easy to turn any application, any Web2 application, into a chain. All you have to do is write your application logic. We take care of the rest. And this is exactly how developing a chain should be. Lost my slides again. All right, and with that, thanks for joining me today. Please feel free to get in touch if you're interested in building with us. My contact info is here. Thank you all again.